Okay, so we're going to see how did we get from this to this point, basically, with what we have. So we first look at the structure of the normal Django project. We have the Django project there, and then we have Django location folder. We have an app and the manage.py file. But in this case, that's when you use the Django start project, and then you add the app, right, using start app. So in our case, we're not going to have the start app. We're going to have a different type of layout. So this would be standard if you use those methods. So our layout app is going to go away, and then we're going to have Django project, right? And we're going to add those files. We're going to add core, right? The directory. We're going to add core. We're going to add static. We're going to add template, right? And then we're going to remove app. Okay. So now then it's going to look like this. The manage.py is still going to be there, but we don't have the app that you would create and run your first views from. We're going to have our views inside core, and then template is HTML inside the template, right? So from there, let's just look at our own structure, right? We just see there the structure. We do have this one is like the default structure. If you want to start with code spaces, there is the default files in the manage.py, which we're not getting rid of. It's going to be there. Then a simple readme and the requirements.txt. So in this case, we don't want to add anything to requirements. In most cases, we're going to use as it is. As we go, we might add to requirements. So over there, we have the load static, and then there's the HTML file where you see everything that is on the right? Then you see that welcome over there. It's also basically that's the file that we have to replicate. We're replicating this file because we want to see, just want to show you basically that it seems like something, but it's built from this one location, right? So if we recreate a .html file, and then we say, okay, we're gonna use that file instead inside views, right? We go to the view. So everything comes from the view in most cases that you have created, and then we're just going to change there to make it the HTML file 2, right, that we have. Then now it should be empty, yes, because this file has nothing in it. We just want to have a heading of some sort. Then we hit H1. Let's make it H1, and then we know that we're expecting at least to see the H1 in there. So there's no other file, HTML file, that contributes to this except for that index file. So now if we take out the index file, we don't have to delete it, we just don't have to reference it, right, in the views. So now if we reload, we have, this is the file we created. So now we build from there. We see what it's like to go from there to this case, basically, right? So to get there, we're just gonna add a couple of basically, I would say a couple of lines, and then the main thing we're gonna focus on, though, is not necessarily to make it look the same, just to have like to have it similar. Okay, so the functionality comes from the views. So if we say something like the 2 + 2 over there, you would expect, if it was computing, you'd expect basically it to do the calculation, right? And it's not showing the calculation. If we try to run it like we pass it inside it and run it as Python in them, it won't execute as well directly on there, right? That has to come from the back. That's where you saw one of basically one of the values passed to the front, right? So the idea of Django and passing data to the HTML file is for you to be able to see easily, basically not to see easily, I guess, to work with complex calculations or complex functions easily, and then put them inside to view in your HTML. Like there, that's a 2 + 2. We just want to load that and then see the difference. This time it's going to compute, right? We just put it inside the context, and then we bring it to the front. We pass it using its name because that's the name we mentioned inside the HTML, right? So now it views nicely, like 4 + 4. So meaning any calculation now you will be able to do inside your views.py file, because that's where your Python sits. You can add more scripts, of course, and then run from there and add more libraries, and then you can do a lot of stuff that you want to view in the front. You can make a full calculator from it or whatever you need to make. So right there, what we have is the picture, the image that we have showing, right? This image, to show it, it has to show in the HTML file, right? You could have some some reference to it from the Python file, but with our case, it just basically simple pulling it from our static, our static library, basically. So our static files. So that's why we're just gonna remove stuff and then just try to keep the structure the same, right? We keep the structure the same. That should show you what things that are irrelevant even at some point to what we are trying to achieve. You will get to learn more about those, like what that HTML is going to do for your app or for your web app as you go. So right now we just want to have basically all the stuff inside the body, so the layout changes a bit. There's nothing in the head at the moment, but what we're trying to have is we're trying to have that image, right? That image that we had earlier, we're trying to show that image front. So we bring in the static. So when we bring the static, we need to reference that we are putting a static a static file, right, to view. So we come back to the old one, the old index. We're just going to load static, and then we're going to have the also load reload, right? So that's when you make changes, you want it to reload automatically. That's what that one is for. They also referenced inside the settings, right? Inside the settings file, you'll see there the static basically, and then there's also the reload. Okay, so since we have those files there, those apps there referenced, so you're kind of like referencing apps in that location basically that you're gonna be able to use inside your Python file and also inside your inside your HTML file. That's what those apps installed apps are for. So then now we're going to use the static, right? And then we're also going to use the reload on the new file that we created. We created a file named HTML. So what we are doing now, we're making sure that, let me just check this one, okay? We're just making sure that we're able to view the image. So before we go any further, we just copy the image. So it's not too much going on, everything's pretty much straightforward. We're just going to view the image from scratch, just initialize it, and then so that you see what goes into the image. But the moment we bring it, of course, going to pop up because of the reload, right? So this is just to show you what is there, which part basically of the image is being useful right now, it's being used. Okay, so we're just gonna have the source, and then the braces there basically that we have with the static, right? That is basically how you then are going to use static files inside your HTML, right? So this is when you're referencing basically from the static folder. If you're not referencing from the static folder and then you're doing like a direct reference, there's different ways of doing that, but generally it becomes more complicated when you use those methods. This one is much more a simpler method. As long as you have your static files loaded already, you are fine. You have to have your static files loaded, otherwise nothing will show up when you run that static, right? Okay, so now we have both of them showing, the original one, and then we have this one as well, the second one that we have, just have a class of its own, right? We're going to give it a different class so that we can do more work on it, and then maybe you can see the differences. So what you're seeing there is basically two GIFs, not videos, just images basically. It's better to work with images at this point because of like at least these versions of HTML can tolerate, right? They can tolerate the GIFs easily. It's not like the old development where you'd have some problems here and then, right? So we're just gonna have that running, and then from there we're just trying to style the second one differently, and then just see basically can we get it to be number one, bigger, right? And then have it let's say just bigger. Yeah, we just basically see where, yeah, what we're gonna have basically when we able to adjust the screen, right? So what you saw there, when you remove the name or change the name, it will lose the reference, and it will just have the placeholder of that image basically, right? Should you basically have a wrong name or something like that. So in the CSS, you notice that already a logo has some CSS to it, basically some styling, some CSS styling. So now if we try to start the second one, we have to reference it, of course, then make sure that the class that we have assigned to it is the relevant one. Okay, so now since we have the relevant class, what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to add our own size, our own mainly and our own view, our own type of display, and then we're going to try to see if we can stretch it just for you to understand what's going on basically just with the HTML part before we add more views later on. Okay, so the position there, we're just going to put it on fixed. Could have been absolute, but we're just going to put it on fixed and then try to run that. Let's see where the issue lies. Okay, we still have the class. Okay, we have the proper name for it. We just make sure that that is the correct reference. Okay, because if you don't have the correct reference, then you get issues of where it doesn't load properly for you, right? So since we have that, let's just check there. Okay, we copy that one and then paste there and then see if they're gonna be like the same, right? We're expecting basically similar settings right now to them. That's not very conclusive. Let's reload with the original because the size of the other one is actually smaller still. So from there, let's just try to see, is our file actually reloading well, right? So, and are we able to edit something else? We give the class to our text, and then we're gonna give some properties to that text, and then see whether that text shows up or not, right? That the style of it shows up or not. Okay, let's see, reload that, and then let me see this one. Okay, so it takes a bit to reload, but you see now that that text, the color is not changing, and we expected what? We expected the color of the text to change, right? So since the color is not changing of the text, let's style it basically not using the CSS file. We want to style it with direct inline styling, right? So the inline styling works. You are able to change the color, but for some reason the static file, we are not able to change the color from our static file main .css, right? So let's just see if we reload that, and then because we're in code spaces, we should be able to reload, and then it comes back keeping the state that it was in. So if we keep that same state, and then from there, we don't have to mind those ones a lot. There you can just close those ones, so we can be able to focus mainly on the issue at hand. The issue at hand being the fact that our main.css seems to not be responding with our styles, basically, that we assign to the way that we assign to the picture, and the ones that we assign to the text as well, because our heading also had some style to it, but it didn't come out okay, right? It was supposed to be red. Okay, so if we're gonna try to debug that, we've already seen that if we do inline works. Okay, and then let's just basically bring in that style directly onto the file, the HTML file, and then what we're going to do is, okay, that works. So that means that for the red, there is the red as well at the bottom. What we're gonna do is we're gonna see how we referenced wrong when it comes to like the static file. It seems like we didn't reference our static file okay. From either our head over there, the file is not referenced okay. So we can just run the style locally, and then in the next one, I will then have moved the style and then reference okay, because we fix as we go. We're gonna go with this project and then see it basically develop into something that looks like something, and the next videos should be a bit shorter, right? So now let's edit the size, and then we're just going to try to make it pull with the screen. So it will go with the size of the screen. The positions is fixed, that should be okay, and then we are at 100%, but we still have it scrolling. So potentially, to have the image in the background not scrolling, maybe we should just at first use if we could use Z index, and then put the text in front, and then the image, we push the image to the back basically. And the one that is left is app logo. Okay, there it is. Okay, it's fixed. So it's app logo, which is the original styling that was there. This is the main image that is there at the moment. Okay, it adjusts well with the screen. And then this would apply to something that you are comfortable with changing size basically, if it is. Otherwise, you would use a cover method where it adjusts, but the size of the video grows in proportion, right? In this case, it just basically, it's cover to cover basically, right? It's then it's edge to edge, yeah. So if you make it bigger, it goes bigger altogether, smaller altogether. All of this basically from this one small views file. There's nothing much more we have on the views files. On the views file, we'll add on the views file. On the next one, we'll work more. Maybe do some more functionality, just to see basically what it means to have that, and what it means to have that basically do Python operations for us, right? So that won't work because right now I don't think we have any data, because our request from the URL doesn't have anything passed to it, right? So of course it will give an error. So right now we just want to view something in the body that is different. We might have to use that Z index again and bring it up again. But if we try and view request right now, it's just under the original heading. So at this point we can potentially create a card, right? So there is the request. So that's what the request is getting at the moment. It has no data inside it, but it is a Django object nonetheless, Python object nonetheless. Okay, so as we go, we're going to try to make sure that we possibly pass some data to the URL, right? But right now I'm not passing any data. We're going to possibly try to pass some data and then see what happens when we pass the data. But the biggest focus will be getting this from being nothing really to being maybe like a nice card that has some functionality. Maybe because people they like the ability to create a login. We maybe add a login as well to it. But yeah, okay. So from there, if you see the CSS, right, there's not too much going on in the CSS. I don't like to keep the CSS here. Of course, I'd like to keep the CSS in the CSS file. And then let's see if we change that to absolute. Absolute introduces a scroll for us, right? It's a scroll up and down. Now when you adjust, if you notice there, it's almost like behaving like the cover, basically, not adjusting with it's just adding a scroll. So the bigger you go, it keeps the proportion, and then you're able to scroll down. Yeah, so that's what we're gonna have for now, and then we are done with that.